Relax, settle in, and enjoy the story while you crochet with me. Tonight's story begins on a night that felt too quiet to be real. Mara lived alone in a small flat above a bakery at the edge of the city. Every evening, she heard the same soft sounds. She heard cups in the sink. She heard a bus far below. She heard a dog bark in the next street. She heard the old clock on her wall count each slow minute. That night, all of those sounds seemed to drift away. Even the clock sounded shy. She sat by the window with yarn in her lap and a half-made scarf around her fingers. Rain touched the glass in tiny silver lines. A yellow lamp warmed the table. Her tea had gone cold. She had planned to work for one more hour. She had planned to finish the row. She had planned to go to bed early for once. Instead, she kept staring at the dark window, because now and then it looked less like glass and more like a deep black pond. Mara was tired in the way that sits behind the eyes and makes every thought feel heavy. She had been tired for months. Not ill, not broken, just worn thin. Every day looked too much like the last one. She woke, worked, washed dishes, answered messages, folded laundry, and told herself that someday she would feel alive again. She did not know when that someday had become a word she no longer trusted. When the light in the room flickered, she thought the storm had touched the wires. When it flickered a second time, she looked at the lamp. When it flickered a third time, the rain on the window stopped moving. Mara froze with the yarn still looped around her finger. One drop of rain hung on the glass and did not slide. The street below stood still. A car waited at the crossing and did not move. The clock on the wall held both hands in place. The whole room felt like a breath someone had forgotten to let go. Then a line of pale blue light appeared in the black window. It was thin at first. Then it widened. It ran from the top of the glass to the bottom like a crack in the night. A soft wind moved through the room, though the window was closed. It smelled like wet leaves, cold stone, and flowers that only bloom after dark. Mara stood so fast that her chair tipped over. The blue line bent. The glass did not shatter. It opened. The window opened inward like a door. On the other side was not the fire escape. It was not the rainy city. It was not even the same sky. Beyond the frame stood a silver field under two moons. Mara did not scream. Later, she would think that was strange. At the time, her fear was too wide and too bright to become a sound. She simply stared. Tall grass moved in the blue light. Far away, something like a bell rang once. A line of white birds crossed the sky. The larger moon was round and pale. The smaller one was shaped like a thin hook. A voice behind her said, "If you wait too long, it may close." Mara spun around. No one stood in the room. The voice came again, lower this time from near the floor. "Down here," it said. "And please do not faint." I hate when people faint at the important part. Mara looked down and almost dropped. The yarn from her hand. A fox sat beside the fallen chair. It was no larger than a common fox. Its fur was dark red, almost brown in the dim room. But its eyes held a strange silver shine, like moonlight on moving water. Around its neck hung a small bell tied with blue thread. Mara took one step back. The fox lifted its nose. "That is fair," it said. "You are surprised. I am surprised too, and I knew this would happen." Mara pressed a hand to her chest. "You can talk." "Yes," said the fox. "You are doing very well." "Most people start with that. What are you?" "A fox," it said. Then it twitched one ear. "A fox with a job, which is worse." Mara stared at the open window. Then at the fox. Then at the still rain. And then at her own hands. As if one of them might explain the rest. "I think I fell asleep," she whispered. "You nearly did," said the fox. "But if you sleep now, you may wake in a much stranger place than this." "Room," Mara swallowed. What is out there? The fox's bell gave one soft note. A country called Oral, it said. A place beside yours, but not part of it. A place of gates. Lost roads. Singing rivers. Old promises. And more trouble than I have time to list. The short version is this. A door opened. It opened for you. And if you want to get home again, you will need to walk through before it changes its mind. Mara almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the words were too impossible to fit inside one real moment. I am not stepping through my window into another world because a fox told me to. Reasonable, said the fox. Then let us try the less pleasant truth. It looked toward the open frame. The field beyond dimmed for 1 second, and Mara saw something move in the grass. It was tall. Too tall. A dark shape with arms long enough to brush the ground. When it raised its head, she saw no face at all. Only a flat white blur where a face should be. Mara backed into the table. The thing in the field turned toward the room. The fox's voice lost all of its humor. If that reaches the window before you cross, it will come in. And then your world will learn why the doors between worlds were meant to stay. Watched. Mara did not ask more. Fear finally found her legs. She grabbed the ball of yarn from the table without knowing why, stepped over the chair, and climbed through the window into the silver field. The moment both feet touched the grass, the air changed. It felt colder and cleaner. The smell of bread and rain was gone. The city vanished behind her. The window closed like still water. Mara turned so fast, she nearly fell. There was no building. No room. No street. No city. Only the field. The 2 moons. The fox at her side. And far away, across low hills touched with pale flowers, a tower of glass that shone like frozen dawn. The bell in the fox's collar rang once. Welcome to Oral, it said. My name is Soren. You are lost now. But if we move quickly, that does not have to last. They crossed the field while the dark shape behind them moved without sound. Mara wanted to look back. Soren told her not to. If you look too long at a door walker, he said, it starts to remember your face. Then it follows that memory. It is rude that way. Mara walked faster. The grass brushed her boots. Tiny white flowers opened as she passed and closed again behind her. The land rolled in soft hills, each one silver on top and dark blue below. No wind touched Mara's skin, yet the whole field moved as if it were breathing. Above them, the hooked moon slid behind the larger one and came out again like a fish through reeds. Why me? Mara asked. Why did that window open for me? Soren leaped onto a stone and trotted along it. I do not know yet. That is one of the many things making my head hurt tonight. You said I can get home. Again, I said you can try. That is better than a promise. Mara stopped. What do you mean try? Soren stopped too. The humor left his face, though some small shine stayed in his eyes. In Oral, doors do not open with iron keys. They open for names, choices, memories, and other things with bad habits. The gate that brought you here should have been watched by the keeper of doors. It was not. The watcher is gone. The gates are failing. Things that belong in one world are slipping into another. If the right gate opens before the wrong ones do, you may go home. If not, both worlds will become a tangled mess, and none of us will enjoy that, Mara felt. The fear rise again, slow and cold. So I am trapped in a fantasy disaster. That is one way to say it, Soren replied. I would call it a very unfair evening. The silver field ended at a low wall of black stones. Beyond it lay an orchard filled with lanterns. At first Mara thought they hung from branches. Then she saw that the fruit itself was glowing. Round golden pears lit the dark between the leaves. They shone with warm light like lamps under green glass. At the center of the orchard stood a village. Its houses were made of pale wood and smooth river stone. Their roofs curved like folded wings. Small streams ran beside the paths, and stepping stones crossed them in clean white lines. At every door hung bells, shells, dried flowers, or strings of bright beads. The place felt gentle at first glance. Then Mara noticed that every window was shut tight. No music played. No children ran. No one laughed. People watched from behind curtains. A woman opened one door, just long enough to pull a young boy inside. An old man on a bench bowed his head when he saw Soren. 3 girls carrying baskets moved aside and let him pass as if he wore a crown or a wound. Mara lowered her voice. "Do they know you?" Sadly, Soren said. "Do they not like you? They like what I usually bring. News, letters, small jokes, the answer to where a goose escaped. Tonight I bring the smell of broken doors. That makes me less charming." They stopped before the largest house in the village. It stood under a tree covered in silver leaves. Unlike the other doors, this one was open. Inside, firelight warmed a long room lined with shelves. Bundles of herbs hung from the beams. Bowls of salt, stones, and dried roots covered a wide table. At the far end of the room stood an old woman in a dark green dress. Her hair was white and braided with blue thread. Her face was lined and calm. Her eyes were the sharp gray of winter water. She looked at Mara once and then at Soren. "So," the old woman said. "It has begun." Soren dipped his head. "I was hoping to be wrong. You are wrong every 3rd day," the woman's gaze returned to Mara. Not tonight. Mara had expected wonder or suspicion. The old woman showed neither. She moved like someone who had spent her whole life waiting for strange things, and had no wish to waste energy on surprise. "Come in," she said. "I am Elira." "Sit before your knees decide for you." Mara sat. Only then did she realize how badly her legs were shaking. Elira poured steaming tea into a clay cup and set it before her. The smell was sweet and green. Mara held the cup with both hands, more for the warmth than the drink. "I need to go home," Mara said. The words came out too quickly. There was a window and a field and something with no face. And he said there are gates and a missing watcher. And I do not understand any of this. And I need to go home. Elira nodded, as if Mara had told her that rain was wet. "Yes," she said. "That is the trouble." Soren jumped onto a stool. "The door walkers are out already. I saw one at the crossing field." Elira's mouth tightened. "Then the hollow court has noticed the open paths." Mara looked from one to the other. "The what?" Elira stirred something in a small silver bowl. A faint blue smoke rose from it. "Long ago," she said, "there were 7 great gates between far places. Some led from one land to another. Some led to the deep woods. Some led to the sea, under the roots of the world. One led to places like yours. All 7 were watched by the keeper of doors, who lived in the glass tower you saw from the hills. The keeper made sure each gate opened at the right hour, for the right reason, to the right traveler. And now the tower has been dark for 12 nights. No bells from its roof. No light from its rooms. No answer from the gate hall. Since then, roads have bent the wrong way. Doors open onto places they should never meet. And the hollow court, which lives on lost roads and feeds on fear, has begun to stretch its hands." Mara held the cup harder. "Why would the gate to my world open for me?" Elira reached across the table. She touched the yarn ball Mara had carried without thinking. Only then did Mara notice she still held it under one arm like something precious. Elira smiled for the first time. "A thread," she said. "Of course," Mara blinked. "It is yarn, in your world perhaps. Here, all thread is a kind of promise. A line from one thing to another. A way through a maze. A mark that says, follow this and not that. Sometimes the oldest powers like simple tools best. Soren's tail flicked. I thought the same. Elira gave him a look. No, you did not. You thought, sadly, that a fox should not be the one doing all the work again. Soren looked offended. I can think two thoughts. Elira ignored him. She leaned toward Mara. If you want to go home, the first step is clear. We must reach the glass tower. But the straight road is closed. The hollow court has taken the valley paths. We will need the older way. To walk the older way, we need three things. A true guide. A light that does not lie. And a key made from a choice freely given. Mara frowned. Those sound like riddles. They are worse, said Soren. They are instructions. Elira stood and went to a shelf. From it, she took a lantern, no larger than both hands together. Its frame was made of pale silver wood. Inside, no flame burned. Only darkness. This, she said, setting it before Mara, is a star lantern. It lights when carried by someone who still knows what they are trying to save. Do not lose it. Do not trade it. Do not let anyone else name what it should show you. Mara touched the cool frame. What am I trying to save? Elira answered at once. Home, the lantern filled with soft gold light. Mara stared. Soren let out a low whistle. Well, that is helpful. Elira was already moving again. From another shelf, she took a small bone key on a blue cord. This key opens no lock made by hand, she said. It opens a ferry at the river loom. The ferryman will take you to the old road if he accepts your fare. What fare? Elira placed the key in Mara's palm and closed her fingers around it. A choice, she said. And once given, it cannot be taken back. Mara wanted to ask a dozen questions. She wanted to refuse all of them. Instead, she heard herself say, How far is the river? If we leave now, said Soren, we reach it by dawn. If nothing hunts us. If we do not fall into the reed marsh. If the bridge is still there. If the moon hounds are asleep. If fortune grows kind for one night. Mara looked at him. You really know how to calm a person. I do my best. Elira went to the door. Outside, the village bells began to ring in slow, uneven notes. One bell. Then another. Then many at once. A cry rose from the orchard. Elira shut the door and dropped the wooden bar into place. They have reached the village edge, she said quietly. Mara stood so fast the stools scraped the floor. What reached the village? Soren jumped down. That would be the part where we leave. The back door of Elira's house opened onto a narrow garden full of night flowers. Their pale heads turned as Mara passed. A stone path ran between rows of mint, foxglove, and dark blue roses. Beyond the garden wall, the land fell away into a small ravine filled with trees. A hidden stair, cut into the earth, led down through the roots. Elira thrust a wrapped bundle into Mara's hands. Bread, cheese, dried apples, and a small knife. The knife is for rope, not heroics. If you meet a bargain monger, speak less than you think. If you hear singing from the marsh, do not follow it. If Soren tells you to run, trust him before you trust your fear. Mara clutched the bundle. You are not coming, Elira shook her head. My place is here. When villages begin to hear bells at the wrong hour. Old women do not go on adventures. Old women stay and make sure the children sleep through them. For the first time, her calm face softened. She placed one hand on Mara's cheek. I know you are afraid, she said. You should be. But fear is only a weather. It passes. Keep walking, Mara nodded. Then she and Soren went down the hidden stair into the ravine. Branches closed above them. The sounds of the village became faint. Soon only their steps and the rustle of leaves remained. Mara held the star lantern low. Its gold light touched roots, stones, and patches of fern. Every now and then it brightened on its own, guiding her around a broken step or a slick patch of mud. At the bottom of the ravine, ran a path paved in old white stones. Some had cracked, some had sunk into the earth. Yet the line of the road still showed, pale under moss. "The old road?" Mara asked. "One finger of it," Soren said. "The whole road once crossed half of Orel. Now most people avoid it, which I find very wise. They walked for what felt like hours. Sometimes the path passed under trees, with trunks wide as small rooms. Sometimes it crossed open places, where the moonlight fell in sheets over grass. Once Mara saw a herd of deer standing in a shallow pool. Their antlers were full of little white flowers. They looked at her without fear, and then walked into the water until they vanished. Once she heard drums far away, and asked what they were. Soren said he did not know, and that he intended to stay uninformed. By the time the larger moon lowered toward the west, Mara's thoughts had become slow and simple. One step, then another. Hold the lantern. Follow the fox. Do not think about home too hard, or it will hurt. At last, the road narrowed between two leaning stones. Beyond them stretched a marsh. Black water shone between thick beds of reeds. Low mist lay over it like torn cloth. The path became a line of flat stones, barely raised above the mud. A broken bridge waited far ahead, its middle fallen into the dark water below. Soren stopped. "The reed marsh," he said. "Please walk where I walk. Do not test the edges. The marsh keeps what it is given." Mara stared at the mist. Wonderful, they stepped onto the stones. The air smelled of wet earth and something sweet beneath it, almost like rotten fruit. Reeds brushed Mara's coat. The mud beside the path trembled now, and then for no clear reason. Somewhere deeper in the marsh, frogs or birds made thin clicking sounds. The mist hid the distance. The broken bridge seemed no closer after 10 minutes than it had at the start. Mara was so busy watching her feet that she did not notice the singing at first. A woman's voice drifted through the reeds. Soft. Warm. Near enough to touch. "Mara," Mara stopped. The voice came again, a little clearer. "Mara, over here." The sound reached into her chest and pulled. It was familiar. Not because she knew the song, but because the voice sounded like comfort itself. Like a friend on a hard day. Like someone waking her gently from sleep. Soren spun around so fast his paws splashed. "Do not answer." Mara's mouth closed. She had not realized she was about to speak. The voice changed. Now it sounded like her mother. Not exactly, but enough to strike deep. "Mara, sweetheart, come here. You are almost home." A shape moved in the mist to her left. A warm yellow light shone behind the reeds. For one wild moment, she thought she saw the kitchen window from her childhood home. She smelled soup. She heard plates. A chair scraped across a floor she knew by heart. Her foot shifted off the stone. Soren leaped and bit the hem of her coat hard enough to sting. Mara gasped and stumbled back onto the path. The mist hissed. The warm light went out. The voice stretched into a thin, harsh cry, and then broke apart into many whispers. Soren's ears were flat. "Keep moving." Mara nodded, ashamed and shaken. What was that? Marsh singers. They call with whatever shape your heart misses most. If you walk toward them, the mud does the rest. Mara looked down at the black water. A pale hand floated just below the surface beside the path. It opened and closed like a water flower. Then it sank. She walked faster. The bridge ahead had once been fine stone. Now only the ends remained. The middle span lay tilted in the marsh, half swallowed by mud and reeds. "We have to cross that," Mara whispered. "We have to cross under it," said Soren. Beneath the fallen stones, a narrow gap remained. A line of old support beams still held one side clear enough to crawl through. Dark water moved below them. Mara dropped to her knees at the edge, held the lantern between her teeth, and pulled herself after Soren under the sagging stone. Mud soaked her sleeves. Sharp rocks scraped her palms. The space smelled of cold slime and old things sealed away from air. Halfway through, something brushed her ankle. She kicked hard and almost hit her head on the stone above. The thing brushed her again. Soft. Wet. Searching. Mara twisted and looked down. A face stared up from the water. It was not a living face. It was made of pale mud shaped like skin. Its mouth was too wide. Its eyes were empty holes. Both hands reached for her boots. Mara bit back a scream. Soren turned, teeth bared. The bell at his throat rang once, sharp as cut glass. The mud face split apart and fell into the black water with a splash. Move, Soren snapped. Mara moved. When she finally crawled free on the far side, she rolled onto the stones and lay shaking under the moonlight. Mud streaked her hands and coat. Her breath came in fast bursts. The star lantern somehow still glowed. Soren sat beside her until the shaking eased. You are alive, he said. That is a solid achievement for a first night. Mara laughed once, a dry and broken sound. I hate this place. Soren looked across the marsh. The mist parted around his small shape like pale cloth. No, he said quietly. You hate what is happening to it. That is different. Mara pushed herself upright. Ahead, the path rose from the marsh toward a line of willow trees. Beyond them, she heard running water. The river, she asked. Soren nodded. Dawn is close. So is the ferryman. Try not to insult him. He carries grudges like other people carry bread. The willows stood in a silver row along the bank of the river loom. Their branches touched the surface like long gray fingers. The water itself was unlike any river Mara had ever seen. It shone from within. Not bright, but softly, as if moonlight had melted into it and stayed there. Slow lights drifted under the surface. Some were white, some blue, some green like deep glass. They moved with the current and vanished beneath the roots of the trees. Mist rose from the river in thin ribbons. At the bank waited a narrow ferry made of dark wood. No rope held it. No pole rested inside it. A single lamp burned at the bow with a still white flame. The ferryman stood beside it. He was tall and very thin. His coat was black and fell almost to the water. His hair was bound in a knot at the back of his neck. His face might once have been kind, but now it looked carved from patience and old stone. Around one wrist, he wore a chain of small brass keys. He looked first at Soren, then at Mara, then at the bone key in her hand. You are late, he said. I was ambushed by events, Soren replied. The ferryman did not seem moved by this. He held out one long hand. The fair, Mara placed the bone key on his palm. He closed his fingers around it. The key vanished, leaving only a small mark of blue light on his skin. Not that one, he said. That opens the asking. Not the crossing, Mara stared. You mean the fair is something else? The ferryman looked at her as if she had just discovered that water was wet. Of course, Soren sighed. I did warn you. No, you did not. I implied it with style. The ferryman stepped into the boat. If you wish to cross the river loom, you must give it a choice you can never unmake. A true choice. A living choice. Not a coin. Not a lie. Not a half-promise. Moira's stomach dropped. What kind of choice? The white flame in the boat lamp bent toward her. The ferryman spoke without hurry. This river carries memory from one shore to another. No one passes by clinging to every road they might have taken. Choose one. Leave it. The river will bear it away. Mara's mind went blank for a moment. Then too many thoughts came at once. A road she had not taken. A life she had not lived. A thing she still wanted. I do not understand, she whispered. You do, said the ferryman. That is why your face changed. Mara looked down at the glowing water. Old thoughts rose like fish from a dark place. She remembered the art school letter she had hidden in a drawer at 19. Because it was in another city. And her father had been ill. And there was no money, and she had told herself staying home was the right thing. She remembered the friend she had loved and never told. She remembered every time she had thought, maybe later. Maybe one day. Maybe when life is easier. She remembered how many doors in her own world she had closed herself. Soren's voice was gentle for once. It must be given freely, Mara. She closed her eyes. Of all the roads she had not taken, one had haunted her longest. Not because it was surely the best. Not because it would have made her famous or rich or grand. But because it was the first big dream she had put away. A small room in another city. Paint on her hands. A chance to make things and see if they mattered. She had buried it so deeply that she rarely let herself name it. When she opened her eyes, the river seemed to be listening. I give the life where I left for the art school, she said softly. The life where I kept that first brave version of myself. I let it go. I will not stand on both shores anymore. The white flame rose higher. The ferryman nodded once. Given, he said. Pain touched Mara then, but not like a wound. It felt more like a thread being drawn from deep inside her. She swayed. For 1 second, she saw a train station she had never stood in. A narrow bed in a room she had never rented. Paintings she had never made. A different laughter in her own mouth. Then the vision blurred and fell into the river. One green light under the water brightened and drifted away. Mara caught her breath. Tears burned her eyes, though she was not sure whether they came from grief or relief. The ferryman held out his hand. Bored, she stepped into the ferry. Soren jumped in after her. The boat pushed away from the bank without rope, pole, or hand. The current caught it at once. The crossing was silent. The river moved wider than it had looked from shore. The willows on the near bank grew small. Mist gathered around the boat, and with it came strange sights. Mara saw shadows of towers beneath the water. She saw stairs descending into light. She saw people walking on the riverbed as if through a dream, carrying lanterns or flowers or empty bowls. None of them looked at the ferry. All drifted past and were gone. What is this place? Mara whispered. Soren sat very still. The river loom remembers every crossing it has ever kept. Best not to stare too hard. Memory can pull as strongly as loss. Halfway across, the ferryman spoke again. The gate hall lies beyond the old road, he said. But the old road no longer runs straight. Something waits there and turns travelers from their path. It will offer help. Do not believe what asks too eagerly. Mara nodded. Her throat still felt tight. The far bank appeared through the mist. Unlike the willow shore, this one rose in pale steps of stone. At the top stood a row of statues, with their faces worn smooth by time. Between them opened a road lined with white grass. At the end of that road, very far away, the glass tower shone under the fatting moons. The ferry touched shore. Mara stepped out. When she turned to thank the ferryman, he was already drifting away again. Only his voice came back through the mist. Whatever you seek at the tower, he called, do not forget this. A door is not always meant to be escaped through. Sometimes it is meant to be opened from the other side. Then he was gone. Mara stood in the pale dawn with Soren at her side, and the star lantern warm in her hand. For the first time since she had crossed the window, the sky began to brighten. It did not brighten with pink or gold. It brightened with soft silver, like pearls under water. Ahead of them, the old road climbed toward hills covered in white grass and dark pines. Beyond those hills stood the tower, clear now in the morning light. It rose from a ring of cliffs. Its walls were made of clear glass or crystal, or something close enough to fool the eye. Inside them moved slow bands of color, like dawn caught in ice. Myra took one breath, and then another. "All right," she said. "I crossed the terrifying river. I gave away a whole other life. I am covered in marsh mud. Let's finish this." Soren looked up at her. "There is a chance you are becoming impressive." Mara almost smiled. Then a horn sounded across the hills. It was low, deep, and full of hunger. From the road behind them came the thunder of running feet. The path down from the ridge was steep and bright with morning light. By noon, Mara could see all of Sarath below. The lake shone blue as glass. White houses curved around its shore. Rose-colored walls and broken bridges marked the old city center. Even in ruin, the place looked full of grace. "It was once a city of road keepers and map makers," Soren said. "Now it is mostly ghosts, dust, and people too stubborn to leave." A voice behind them said, "That is unkind." "It is also true." Mara turned. A boy stood at the edge of the path with a small harp on his back, and a grin that looked brighter than the ruined day around him. He was thin, quick-eyed, and younger than Mara had expected any guide through danger to be. "Taryn," Soren said with great suffering. "Of course," Taryn bowed to Mara. "I know the city. I know which stairs still hold. I know where the Whisper men walk. And I already decided I am coming." Mara looked at Soren. Soren looked briefly ready to throw himself into the lake. At last he muttered, "Fine. But if you do something reckless, I will be rude about it." Taryn smiled. So nothing changes. They entered Sarath by the lower gate. The city was silent. Weeds grew between white stones. Fountains still ran where no one came to drink. Shutters moved in the wind. Gray figures in white masks drifted through the upper streets. "Whisper men," Taryn said. "They call your name until you forget why you were walking." Mara tightened her grip. On the lantern, Taryn led them through narrow lanes to a low, wide building covered in green tiles. Its doors were carved with stars, roads, and tiny silver bridges. "The Hall of Maps," he said. Inside, dust lay thick over long tables and tall frames of rolled parchment. Some maps had rotted. Some had burned. A few still shone with careful lines and painted marks. They spread the best of them across a table. Mara saw the silver field where she had arrived. The river loom. Sarath. The cliffs of the glass tower. And red lines marking the old gate roads. One line ran from the tower toward a small arch symbol that Soren said was the world. Gate. Halfway there, the red line vanished under a stain of black. "The road is wrapped," Soren said. "The hollow court is sitting on it." "Not sitting," said a woman from the doorway. "Hunting." She entered with the calm of someone used to being obeyed. Her silver cloak was torn at one edge. A blue-lit sword rested at her side. Her face was young, but her eyes carried old grief. Soren's ears went flat. "Captain Neris." Neris came to the table and looked at Mara. "So the stranger has finally come." She told them what the others had only guessed. Before the tower went dark, the keeper had sent warning that a thread walker from another world might arrive. Then the bells had fallen silent. Every road to the tower had bent wrong. The hollow court had taken the gate lines. And the road to Mara's gate was being held shut until the walls between worlds grew. Thin enough to tear. "Can it be stopped?" Mara asked. "Yes," said Neris. "If the tower bells ring before the next moonrise. When they ring in order, every road remembers its true path. And if they do not," Neris did not soften the answer, "then both worlds begin to spill into each other." From inside her cloak, she drew a bundle wrapped in white cloth. When she opened it, a clear crystal bell lay within, shining with faint rainbow light. "The first tower bell," she said. "It fell in the storm. I found it in the lower cliffs. One bell alone cannot wake the tower. But in the bell room it may answer the others." She handed it to Mara. The crystal felt cool and far lighter than it should have been. Neris then told them about the House of Echoes on the hill road. Once it had been a rest house for travelers. Now it trapped anyone trying to reach the tower. It wore the shape of love, home, and mercy. Those who entered forgot why they meant to leave. Taryn let out a slow breath. Wonderful. A haunted lighthouse between us and the end of the world. A crash sounded outside. Then another. Whispers slid under the door like dry leaves. Neris drew her sword. They found us. We move now. Myra tucked the bell into her satchel, lifted the lantern, and followed them back into the ruined streets. She no longer felt like someone who had fallen into a strange dream. She felt like someone already too deep inside it to turn away. They crossed the upper market with whisper men drifting between broken stalls. The creatures spoke with breathless voices from behind their blank masks. Mara, rest. Mara, come this way. Mara, no one needs you to be brave. Mara nearly slowed. Soren bit her boot and she pushed on. Neris cut one whisper man through the chest, and gray dust poured out. Taryn struck a sharp note on his harp. The sound cracked through the square and drove two more back. When one reached for Mara, she flung her yarn across the path. The thread flashed gold. The creature walked into it and fell apart like mist in sun. Useful, Neris said. They reached the hill road by dusk. At its top stood the House of Echoes. It looked almost ordinary. 2 stories. Wide porch. Many windows. Warm light at the door. That was the worst part of it. Everything about it said safety. Everything about it was false. Inside, the hall smelled of bread, lavender, and rain. The scents changed each time Mara breathed. A woman's voice from the next room called her name in the exact tone her mother used when she wanted her to come sit down and rest. Neris gripped Mara's arm. Keep walking. The hall stretched as they crossed it. Doors appeared where none had been. Pictures on the wall blurred into scenes from their lives. A side room opened, and Mara saw her own flat above the bakery. The yellow lamp glowed. Her unfinished scarf waited on the table. A second Mara sat safely in the chair and smiled. Come in, the false Mara said. It was only a dream. For one wild moment, Mara almost believed it. Then the star lantern in her hand went dark. The shock broke the spell. The false room flickered. The smile on the other Mara widened too far. Mara turned away at once. The lantern blazed again. Taryn heard his grandmother singing from upstairs. Soren heard voices from some lost moonlit field. Neris heard a man calling her by a name no one else in Oral ever used. Still they walked. At the end of the hall stood a black door. Beyond it waited a long chamber full of mirrors. At the center of the chamber sat a man in dark clothes with gray eyes and tired kindness in his face. Neris stopped as if struck. Kale. Mara did not know the name, but the grief in it filled the room. The house lies, Soren said low. Usually, the man answered. But not in every part. He rose and told them the truth as quickly as he could before the house twisted it. He was an echo of the last keeper of doors, not the true man. When the first gate failed, the hollow court had entered the tower. Its king had taken the keeper's face and body for its own. The real Kale was gone. What remained here in the house was only memory with enough shape left to warn them. He showed them the high bell room in the mirrors. 6 bell cords had been cut. 1 still remained. Only a thread walker could raise the fallen bell and touch the torn road without being swallowed. So it is me, Mara said. Yes, said the echo. The tower called the right hands at the last possible hour. Neris asked the question. That mattered most. How do we leave this house? The echo looked at her with sorrow. By nomming what is real and refusing what begs you to stay. At once. The mirrors brightened. Myra saw her room again. But this time, her mother sat at the table. smiling gently over 2 cups of tea. Taryn saw his grandmother by the shrine. Soren saw a field full of running foxes. Neris saw Kale alive beside a bright sea. The voices urged them to stop fighting, to come home, to rest. Mara's whole body leaned toward the mirror. Then she remembered the marsh, the city, the broken roads, and Alira's steady hand on her cheek. "My home is not here," she said. "This house is only hunger wearing comfort. I will not feed it." The star lantern exploded with gold light. Her mirror cracked. Taryn shouted through tears. "What is real is that my grandmother is waiting at the shrine. And she would hit me with a spoon if I gave up in a haunted house." His mirror burst. Soren rang his bell and snapped. "What is real is that I hate this place, too." More mirrors shattered. Neris stood longest before the image of Kale by the sea. Then she lifted her sword. "What is real," she said, voice breaking and hard at once, "is that you are dead. And because you are dead, I will finish this." She drove the sword into the floor. The chamber split with a sound like thunder. Every mirror burst. The walls of the house screamed. Plaster ran like water. Doors slammed. The echo of Kale smiled once at Neris, full of pride and farewell, and vanished with the falling glass. They ran. The front steps appeared. Cold evening air hit their faces. Myra leaped out into the road. The others followed. Behind them, the House of Echoes folded in on itself without flame or smoke. It crumpled into a heap of gray leaves that the wind lifted away. The road to the cliff stood open. Moonrise was close. No one said a word. They simply turned toward the glass tower and climbed. They left the Hall of Maps, through a side court choked with ivy. Neris moved first, silent and sure. Taryn followed with his harp on his back and a knife in hand. Soren stayed close to Mara's heels. The city around them seemed to be listening. Shutters shifted. Loose tiles clicked. Somewhere far off, glass broke. The upper market of Serath had once been rich. Mara saw it even through ruin. Arched stalls lined a broad square, paved in pale rose stone. Dry basins stood where fountains had run. Balconies curved overhead like carved lace. Here and there faded awnings still hung in strips of blue, gold, and green. Now gray figures moved among the stalls. Whisper men. They drifted in pairs and threes. Heads tilted, as if hearing voices from a great distance. Their white masks had no mouths, yet Mara could hear them murmur. The sound was soft and many-layered, like several people speaking from behind a wall. Neris held up one hand. The others stopped in the shadow of a broken arch. "We cross the square quickly," she said. "They are not strong alone. But they can call what is," Taryn whispered, comforting. Neris ignored him. "If they speak your name, do not answer." Mara nodded. They moved. At first it seemed the Whisper men had not seen them. Then one turned its blank mask toward Mara. The murmuring in the square rose. "Mara." It came from every side at once. Soft. Breathless. Close. "Mara, you're tired. Mara, come this way. Mara, there is a room with a lamp and a warm bed. Mara, no one will ask anything more of you." Her feet slowed. Soren bit her boot. She jolted back to herself and kept moving. Neris cut down the first Whisper man that stepped into their path. It did not bleed. Gray dust poured from the split in its chest. Taryn plucked one sharp note on the strings of his little harp. The sound cracked through the square. 2 more Whisper men recoiled as if struck. Myra ran between overturned stalls. The star lantern blazed brighter with each step. A Whisper man reached from the left. Its fingers were long and pale as roots. Without thinking, Myra caught the loose end of her yarn, pulled it around a market post, and flung the line across the path. Gold thread flashed into being. The Whisper man walked into it and came apart soundlessly. like fog cut by morning light. Neris looked back once, just long enough for surprise to touch her face. Useful. I am discovering that, Mara panted. They reached the far side of the market and plunged into a narrow lane climbing the hill. The lane twisted between high walls overgrown with climbing roses that bloomed black. In the shade, at the top stood a gate of white stone. Beyond it, the hill road ran between cypress trees toward a lone house. The House of Echoes. Even from far away, Mara knew it must be the place. It was not large. 2 stories. Wide porch. Many windows. It should have looked ordinary. Instead, it stood with the stillness of a trap that knew it would not need to spring. Twice. Its walls were painted a faded cream. Its roof of dark slate shone in the dim afternoon. No bird sat upon it. No leaf moved near it. The road itself seemed to hesitate at the front steps. We could burn it, Taryn said hopefully. Neris shook her head. It would still be standing when the fire forgot itself. Soren's voice was low. Stay close. If you hear something from another room, ignore it. If you think you see a door you have used before, you have not. If any of us leaves your sight, call once. No more than once. Myra's mouth had gone dry. And if the house answers, then do not listen. Neris opened the gate. The cypress trees lined the walk like dark guards. The front door of the house stood open. Warm light spilled through it. Myra smelled bread. Then lavender. Then rain on city stone. The scents changed each time she breathed. Taryn muttered a curse. Inside, the entrance hall was plain and clean. A narrow carpet ran down the middle. A lamp burned on a side table. Framed pictures lined the walls, though whenever Myra tried to focus on one, its image seemed to blur. Ahead stood an open sitting room. To the left, a dining room glowed with firelight. To the right, a stair curved up into shadow. No dust. No ruin. No sign that the place should be empty. A woman's voice called from the sitting room. Myra. Is that you? Myra stopped dead. She knew that voice. Not almost. Not near enough. Knew it. Her mother. Warm. Tired. Gentle in the exact way that belonged only to her. Myra's whole body leaned toward the sound before her mind caught up. Neris grabbed her arm. Hard. Keep walking, but that is my mother. No, said Neris. It is a house. Myra let herself be pulled forward. As they crossed the hall, the voices multiplied. From the dining room came laughter that sounded like Taryn as a child. From upstairs came someone calling Soren by a soft, strange name, Mara. Had never heard. From the kitchen came the clear ring of bells, and a man's voice telling Neris that she was finally forgiven. Neris went white but did not slow. The hall stretched. Mara knew it stretched, because the front door behind them should have been only a few steps away. Now when she glanced back, it looked half a house distant. The carpet lengthened under their boots. The framed pictures on the walls shifted. One showed Myra as a little girl at the beach, though no such picture had ever hung in any house she knew. A side door opened. Inside it stood Mara's flat above the bakery. The yellow lamp. The sink. The half-made scarf. The dark window. Everything exactly as she had left it. She faltered so sharply that Soren crashed into her ankle. From inside the flat came the sound of the clock. Tick. 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 Then her own voice, soft and full of relief. Oh, thank God. I thought I would never get back. Mara stared into the room. She saw herself sitting at the table with tears on her face. Safe at home. Alive. Finished with all of this. The other Mara looked up and smiled. Come in, she said. It was only a dream. Every part of Mara ached to believe it. She took one step toward the door. Then the star lantern in her hand went dark. The sudden darkness shocked her more than a scream might have done. She looked down. The gold light had shrunk to a single dull ember. The false room ahead flickered. Myra looked at the other version of herself and saw the smile break at the edges. Too wide. Too still. Waiting. With a raw sound, she yanked her gaze away and stumbled after the others. The lantern flared back to life at once. The hall changed again. Now it was shorter. Now the sitting room on the left was gone. Now there were 6 doors where before there had been 2. Taryn had both hands over his ears. Tears ran down his face, though he kept walking. Soren moved with his head low and teeth bared. Neris's grip on her sword was so tight her knuckles had turned white. At the far end of the hall stood another door. Unlike the others, it was made of black wood. No light came from under it. Neris stopped before it. "This is the heart room," she said through clenched teeth. "The road continues beyond." "How do you know?" Mara asked. Neris did not answer at once. When she did, her voice was flat. "Because I reached this door once before. And I ran." No one spoke. Then Neris opened it. Inside was not a room, but a long chamber filled with mirrors. Tall mirrors. Small mirrors. Round mirrors. Broken mirrors. All stood on the floor, or hung from chains, or leaned against the walls. And each one moved a different scene. Myra saw forests, city streets, empty rooms, moonlit roads, faces turning, hands reaching. At the center of the chamber stood a single chair. In the chair sat a man. He was dressed in simple dark clothes. His hair was black and touched with silver at the temples. His face was kind in a tired way. His eyes were gray. He looked at Neris and smiled softly. "My brave captain," he said. "You came back." Neris made no sound. Yet Mara felt the pain that went through her as clearly as if the house had laid a hand on all their hearts. Taryn whispered, "Who is that?" Soren answered in a voice heavy with dread. "The last keeper of doors." Mara looked from the seated man to the others. Neris had gone still as carved ice. Taryn stared in shock. Soren alone seemed unsurprised, though misery darkened his small face. "The house lies," Mara said, though she needed to hear it aloud. "Usually," said the man in the chair. His voice was warm. "It lies by telling the shape of what you most wish were true. That does not mean every part is false." He rose. No chains held him. No wounds showed. He simply stood with the slow ease of someone returning from a long rest. When he stepped forward, every mirror in the room brightened. Neris spoke at last. "Kale died at the tower." The man smiled sadly. "Then perhaps I am what remains." Mara did not know this Kale, yet the name settled in the room like an old bell note. The man turned his gaze to her. "You are the traveler from the near world," he said. "I hoped it would be someone kind. The gates answer kindness more often than strength. Are you the real keeper?" Mara asked. He looked at the mirrors around him. In the way a reflection is real while it lasts, Soren stepped in front of Mara. "What do you want?" The man's eyes softened further. "For once, to tell the truth before the house chews it into smaller pieces." He lifted one hand. In the nearest mirror, Mara saw the glass tower under storm clouds. Its bells hung silent. Black lines climbed its walls like roots. "When the first gate failed," he said, "I climbed to the bell room to ring the warning. But the hollow court had already entered the tower through the lost roads below. Its king had no body of its own. It needed a shape. So it took mine." Taryn made a small sound. Neris's sword lowered by a finger's width, not in trust, but in grief. "The true Kale is gone," the man continued. "The thing that wears him now sits in the high hall and cuts the bell cords one by one. This house was made from the memories that spilled when I fought it. A shell, an echo, Enough of me remains here to warn those who pass, but not enough to leave. Mara's skin went cold. So the keeper is now the enemy. His face is, said the echo. Not his heart. That matters. Faces open doors. Hearts choose what passes through. The mirrors changed again. Now Mara saw a hall of clear glass high in the tower. At its center stood a dark throne made not of wood or stone, but of layered shadow. On it sat a figure in a long coat of pale silver. Its face was beautiful and terrible. And though Mara had never seen the real keeper, she knew at once this beauty was wrong. Too smooth. Too exact. Like a mask made from memory and hunger. At the figure's feet lay 6 bell cords cut clean through. Only one cord remained whole. The 7th bell still sleeps, said the echo. If it rings, the others may answer even in silence. But the bell must be raised by a thread walker. Only a true line can lift it now. Only a hand from beyond Oral can touch the torn path without being swallowed. Mara held the lantern tighter. So I have to go all the way to the top. Yes, fight a shadow king wearing another man's face. If possible, yes. Ring a bell that may wake 6 other bells and save 2 worlds, the echo nodded. That would be ideal. For one brief and strange moment, Mara wanted to laugh. The scale of it had become too large for fear to hold in one shape. Neris stepped forward. If this is true, tell us how to leave the house. The echo looked at her with a pain that needed no explanation. You already know, he said softly. The house breaks when someone walks away from what it offers, and names what is real instead. You almost did it once. Do it now, Neris's jaw tightened. The house seemed to hear. The mirrors darkened. Voices rose again from every side. Begging. Calling. Promising. The echo's shape blurred. Hurry, he said. One mirror brightened larger than the rest. Inside it stood a sunlit garden by the sea. A younger Neris laughed there with the real Kale beside her. Both of them alive and unhurt. The sight hit her like a blade. Myra saw it in the way her breath broke. Taryn's mirror showed an old woman at a lakeside shrine, smiling as if no grief had ever touched her. Soren's showed a green field with other foxes running in moonlight. Myra's showed her own room again, warm and still. But this time, her mother sat at the table with tea, looking up as if she had been waiting all night. The voices called. Stay. Rest. Come home. Take back what was lost. Myra felt the pull in her bones. The room leaned toward it. Her eyes burned. Then she remembered Alira's words. Fear is only a weather. It passes. Keep walking. Mara drew one breath and said, clear as she could, what is real is this. My home is waiting, but not here. My mother is alive in my own world, not trapped in a mirror. This house is only hunger wearing comfort. I will not feed it, the star lantern blazed. Gold light leaped from it across the floor in bright woven lines. The mirrors cracked. Voices shrieked. The false room with Mara's mother shattered into rain. Beside her, Taryn wiped his face hard with one sleeve and shouted, what is real is that my grandmother is at the shrine. And she would beat me with her spoon if I gave up in a haunted house. His mirror burst. Soren rang his bell. What is real is that I hate sentiment, and I have no time for this nonsense. 2 mirrors exploded at once. Neris stood rigid, staring into the sea garden where Kale waited with open arms. For one terrible second, Mara thought she would remain there forever. Then Neris lifted her sword and pointed it not at the image, but at the floor. What is real, she said, voice shaking and hard, is that you are dead. And because you are dead, I will finish what you could not. She drove the sword down. The floor cracked open with a sound like thunder. Every mirror in the chamber burst. The walls of the House of Echoes screamed around them. Plaster split. The carpet ran like water. Doors slammed in every direction. The echo of Kale smiled once at Neris, full of pride and farewell, and vanished with the falling glass. "Move," shouted Soren. They ran through the tearing room as the house collapsed into itself. The black door ahead flew open. Cold evening air poured in. Myra leaped over a crack in the floor, hit the front steps hard, and rolled into the road outside. Behind them, the house of echoes folded inward without flame, without dust, without ruin. It simply shrank, crumpled like paper in an unseen fist, and became a heap of gray leaves that the wind carried away. For a long moment no one spoke. The hill road stretched ahead in rising turns toward the cliffs of the glass tower. Above it the sky had darkened. Moonrise was not far. Neris picked herself up first. Her face was wet, but her voice was steady. "The house is gone," she said. "The road is open. We climb now, or we lose the bells." Myra looked up at the tower. It seemed closer than before. Too close. So close that she could see lights moving behind the clear walls. Not warm lights. Cold ones. Like stars trapped under ice. She stood, though every muscle ached. Taryn tuned one broken harp string with trembling fingers. Soren shook glass dust from his fur. No one asked whether they should go on. They already knew. Together, they began the final climb. The road to the tower wound along the cliffs in steep white turns. Night rose with them. The larger moon cleared the eastern hills. The hooked moon followed, thin and sharp. Below, the lands of Oral spread in silver and blue. Myra could see the marsh like a dark scar. The lake of Serath like a mirror. The field where she had first arrived. And beyond all of it lines of forest and pale, distant hills. For one breath, the beauty of it struck her so hard that she forgot her fear. Then the tower bells gave a small broken sound. Not a ring. A shiver. They all looked up. Near the top of the glass tower, 7 bell frames circled the highest room. 6 hung dark and still. One trembled, as if something had brushed it from within. "We are late," Neris said. The main gate of the tower stood open. No guards waited. No servants. No welcome. Only a great entry hall made of clear walls and pale floors, empty as held breath. Lines of light ran under the glass like slow water. Far overhead rose stairs and bridges and hanging rooms, all shining with moonlight that entered from every side. At the center of the hall stood a round well of darkness. It was not a true well. It had no stone edge. It was simply a hole in the light itself, black and deep, cut into the glass floor. Thin shadow roots climbed from it across the walls toward the upper rooms. "The gate heart," Soren whispered. The hollow court rooted itself in the tower core. Neris drew her sword. Taryn took his harp in both hands. Myra felt the yarn at her wrist warm like a waking pulse. From the upper stair came slow applause. The figure descending wore silver. The face was beautiful in a calm, inhuman way. Dark hair, clear gray eyes, a mouth shaped for kindness and command. Yet the shadow under its feet moved wrong, like deep water with too many hands beneath it. The false keeper stopped halfway down the stair and smiled. "So," it said, "the thread walker arrives." Its voice was smooth and pleasant. It made Mara's skin crawl. Neris raised her sword. "You wear stolen skin." The thing glanced at her almost fondly. "And you wear grief as if it were armor. We all borrow what we need." Taryn spat onto the glass floor. A brave choice, Mara thought, given how very little it seemed likely to help. The false keeper's eyes settled on Mara. "You have had a hard night," it said. "You need not finish it. Give me the lantern. Give me the bell. I will send you home before dawn. You will wake in your chair. Your tea will still be warm. You will remember this only as a strange dream and a passing sorrow." Mara's heart twisted at the picture it painted. The thing smiled wider. All I ask in return is that you leave Oral to its own fate. It was dying long before you came. Let it sink. Let the roads close. Your world will remain untouched if I choose that. I can be generous, Soren hissed. Liar, the false keeper did not look at him. It kept its bright gaze on Mara as it descended one more step. I know what you gave at the river, it said softly. I know the life you let go. I can return it. I can return all the roads you lost. I can set them at your feet like ribbons. One choice, and every closed door in your life opens again. Mara's breath caught. The star lantern dimmed. Not dark, just dimmer. As if it too had heard the offer and feared her answer. She thought of the train station she had never seen. The room she had never rented. The art she had never made. Then she thought of the marsh. The village. The abandoned city. The house of mirrors. And the simple fierce way Alira had said one word. Home. Mara lifted the lantern higher. My life is not a pile of doors for you to play with, she said. I am done standing in every maybe. I choose what is in front of me. The lantern blazed. The false keeper's smile vanished. Then you choose badly. The shadow under its feet rose. It leaped down the stair, no longer graceful, no longer human. Silver cloth tore into wings of smoke. Hands of darkness burst from the floor around the gate heart. The face remained Kale's, but the eyes became black wells filled with moving stars. Neris met it in the middle of the hall. Her sword struck pale blue fire from the shadow claws. Taryn played 3 sharp notes on the harp. The sound turned into silver birds that dove at the creature's face. Buying a breath of time, Soren ran in circles around the gate heart, his bell ringing bright and fast, cutting through the shadow roots where they touched the glass. Mara, Neris shouted. The bell room. Mara ran for the central stair. A shadow hand burst from the floor and grabbed her ankle. Cold stabbed through her leg. She cried out and fell hard against the steps. Without thinking, she snatched the yarn from her wrist, looped it around the stair rail, and pulled. Gold thread flashed. The stair itself answered. Lines of light ran up the clear glass like a woven ladder. The shadow hand recoiled with a hiss. Mara climbed. Below, the battle flashed and rang. She did not look down again. One stair. Then another. Then another. The tower seemed far larger inside than outside. Bridges crossed above her. Rooms of clear crystal opened on either side. Full of old books, astrolabes, maps, and dead lamps. Shadow had touched many of them. Some doors hung open onto darkness. Some showed strange skis beyond that could not belong to the tower at all. At the top of the stair lay the bell room. Its walls were all glass. The moons shone through from every side. 7 great bells hung in a circle from white beams above. 6 were dark crystal. One space stood empty. Cut bell cords lay coiled on the floor like dead snakes. At the center of the room stood a frame of silver wood shaped like a wheel. From it hung the last uncut cord, leading to the 7th bell. Shadow climbed that cord inch by inch, trying to blacken it before the bell could ring. Mara dropped to her knees, tore open her satchel, and pulled out the wrapped crystal bell Neris had found. The moment she unwrapped it, the whole room filled with pale rainbow light. The empty frame at the circle's edge began to hum. Please fit, Mara whispered. She lifted the bell. It was far heavier now than it had been in the cloth. Her arms shook. For one sick moment, she thought she would drop it. Then the yarn around her wrist warmed again. Instinct moved her hands. She looped a line of red thread through the bell handle, over the silver beam, and down through the empty frame. The thread turned gold. The bell rose from her hands and hung in the open place as if it had always belonged there. Below, the tower shook with a terrible cry. The false keeper had felt it. Mara grabbed the loose end of the thread and pulled. Nothing happened. She pulled harder. The bell swayed, but no sound came. Around her, the other 6 bells remained dark. Then she remembered the ferryman. A door is not always meant to be escaped through. Sometimes it is meant to be opened from the other side. The bell was not asleep because it needed force. It was asleep because it was waiting for the true line. Mara closed her eyes. She thought of her own world. The flat above the bakery. The rain on the glass. The smell of tea. Her mother's voice on the phone. The scarf still waiting on the table. Then she thought of Oral. The silver field. Lantern pears. The marsh. The lake. The city hall of maps. Elira's garden. Taryn's laughter. Soren's stubborn bright eyes. Neris climbing again after grief had cut her to the bone. Both worlds lived in her now. Perhaps that was why the gate had chosen her. Mara opened her eyes and tied the end of the thread around her own wrist. "I am the line," she said aloud. "From one world to another. From loss to choice. From fear to home." Ring. She stepped backward and threw her weight against the thread. The crystal bell sang. The sound was pure and high, and wide enough to fill the whole sky. Light burst through the cord into Mara's arm. Through her chest. Into every torn line in the room. The 6 dark bells answered one by one. First a low silver note. Then a bright one. Then a deep one like distant thunder. Then 3 more, rising together. The tower woke. Across Oral, bells answered from places unseen. Village bells. Temple bells. Ship bells. Gate bells under hills. Every light in the glass walls blazed gold. The shadow on the last cord burned away. The black roots climbing from the gate heart cracked. Below, the false keeper screamed with 100 stolen voices. Mara ran back to the stair and looked down. In the hall beneath, the Shadow King had lost its smooth shape. It swelled and twisted, half face, half storm, half open mouths. Neris still fought it. Taryn's harp strings glowed white-hot. Soren's bell rang like a star. The gate heart at the center of the floor was closing. Not by itself. The bells had shown the way. But something still had to seal the torn path. Soren looked up and met Mara's eyes. "Thread Walker," he called. Now, Mara understood. She ran down the steps, no longer feeling her bruises. At the bottom, she went straight for the gate heart, while the others held the creature back. Shadow claws struck at her from both sides. Neris cut one away. Taryn's song drove another back. The false keeper lunged for Mara, with Kale's beautiful broken face split into. "Darkness. You do not know what closing a gate costs," it roared. "No," Mara shouted back. "But I know what leaving it open costs." She reached the edge of the black well. Cold rose from it like winter without end. Within it, she saw lost roads folding over each other. Doors opening into seas. Forests pouring into city streets. Children crying in places with no sky. At the very bottom waited the white, faceless blur she had seen in the field. Not one creature. Many. Hungry. Waiting. Mara threw the yarn. The red thread unwound through the air in a bright arc over the well. As it crossed the darkness, it became a woven bridge of gold. Line after line joined it. Drawn from the bells. The tower walls. The lantern. The roads below. The memory of her own window. The promise of every place that still knew its true name. The false keeper screamed and lunged. Neris caught it from behind and drove her sword through the silver coat into the shadow core beneath. Taryn struck one final note that rang like dawn on water. Soren's bell answered it. Mara pulled the thread closed. The golden bridge folded into a knot of light. The well snapped shut. A shock of silence filled the tower. Then the false keeper burst apart into black leaves that burned before they touched. The floor. Where it had stood, a single silver key fell, rang once on the glass, and went still. For a breath no one moved. Then the whole tower exhaled. The glass walls cleared. The last shadows faded. Moonlight turned clean again. The air lost its weight of fear. Neris sank to one knee, alive but shaking. Taryn laughed, then cried, then laughed again because he seemed unable to choose. Soren sat down hard and looked at all of them with exhausted annoyance. Mara stood by the sealed gate heart with the glowing thread still warm around her wrist. Above them, the 7 bells rang once more, not in warning now, but in welcome. The sound crossed Oral and returned full of distant answers. Then, in the clear floor before Mara, a doorway of pale blue light began to open. A doorway shaped exactly like her window,